Hi everyone. So today I'm going to kind of go back to that traditional demo style and walk you through the steps of the self-portrait assignment. Now, I did venture off from the prompt a little bit in my planning, and so I'm going to show you my thought process there. I didn't go straight from a study into a painting or just work initially from blocking and shapes. I actually did draw out my ideas from a recent photo from a vacation. And as I was working through that photo, got multiple different croppings, which in my eyes gives you multiple different narratives and options. I'm also working from pencil to pen, and then I will do the painting in acrylic. Well, I'll block it in acrylic. And I'm doing that because we have the opportunity here to abstract a little bit, potentially work with mixed media. And I'll talk about how acrylic is really conducive for that, like if you're going to collage into your painting, something along those lines. So as it is in life, we can't always just rely completely on an assignment prompt. Sometimes we have to break the rules a little bit. So hopefully in my process, you'll see maybe some segues as to where you can turn this project into something more individualized to yourself as well. Again, using those steps as far as the abstract portrait painting as a jumping off point. You know, nothing's ever written in stone as far as how you're going to approach it. So again, this is going to be great. I can't wait to walk you through all of it. You'll see my different steps and stages in my studio as well as my supplies. Again, this demo is primarily is in acrylic, so that gives the opportunity for those of you who are working in acrylic paint rather than oil paint, another chance to see how I talk about that medium. Okay, without further ado, I'm gonna take you over to the table behind me where I have the stages of my original studies and talk about the supplies and how I'm going to approach this next portrait study. So I'm starting here with what my subject was. That is the photo that I used from my vacation. I'm in Ensenada. And then the way that I approached the studies. So I took some drawing paper. I knew that I'd be working in a square composition. So I divided it up, trimmed the edge, and then divided it up with the painter's tape. Here, as you can see, it kind of peels off nicely, doesn't take off the drawing paper. And then worked with, actually by hand, some various compositions because the sunglasses interested me, the reflection in the sunglasses interested me, and then that graffiti wall. You can see in the actual photo, my friend is there in the reflection, but I thought it would be interesting to mirror the wall because we're talking about shape in composition. So I thought that might give me some more shape and also interesting things I could do with collage. Okay, well that's falling down, but I'm taking the tape off. Okay, so I'm gonna put this back up and then I'll show you what the next steps were. So the next step was to take my favorite composition and trace it. So I used pencil first, went to the light box. You don't necessarily need a light box to do that, but I did go to the light box and I traced this particular composition onto tracing paper and outlined it in pen, so in Sharpie, okay? Where I did, again, use the light box was that new sheet of drawing paper that I have here, and then basically put this on top. You do sometimes need a light box for that so that you can see this underneath a lot better, okay? So when you're doing a transparency under opacity, you do need a light box of some sort so that you can see it. Otherwise, it's very difficult to see. As you can see, you know, nothing shows through there. Barely, it's there, but barely, okay? So I did that so I could work this up in illustration marker and collage. So I could kind of play around a little bit with color and continued composition and texture here. I did grab some themes from magazines. That's what I grabbed, some old vintage magazines. And I just cut out bits that looked like pen and ink to me. I wanted to kind of keep with the theme and the look. Then when I was done with this, I've actually taken another sheet of tracing paper and made a loose grid over the top of this. So again, I will put this to the side so you can see how that worked. It's very loose, it's not perfectly measured. But what I used that for is the transferring to the canvas. So you can see I'm starting to erase where my grid marks is. grid marks are, sorry, bad grammar there. So I'm taking that, so the main thing is that I have 9 squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so I have to divide this in an even way. This was 12 by 12, so that I would have similar proportion to what is going on here, and that takes some of the guesswork out. Okay, there's still some free drawing in the enlarged bit going on, but I do find when I do this kind of loose gridding system that does help me locate where things need to be, and then makes that blow up the proportion enlargement a little bit easier. Okay, so this is where I'm at now. Let's go again to the steps and how this happened. This, again, my drawing pens and my drawing station that I keep by the drawing board, as you can see. Original source image, multiple compositions. Okay, moving past here to a workup of my favorite composition, grid on tracing paper. Again, remember this was traced initially so that I don't have to redraw everything from scratch, and then blowing it up onto the canvas. Okay, this paper behind, I'm just gonna be using it for, so I don't make a mess, that sort of thing. The other stuff that I have out today, I am going to work, so I do have rubber cement because that's how I work with collage when I'm working with it on paper. But when I switch over to the canvas, if I'm working with any mixed medium, I will use matte medium with acrylic. I have some natural sand, if that's a really fun medium. I also have, I'm gonna do a limited palette. So I have Payne's Gray, white, I'm going to use some poppy colors. I was playing with that with ink. I'm going to do blue-green and then quinacridone magenta is what I have out. So again, I'm not really worried about making this realistic. I'm kind of thinking pop art for this a little bit, kind of taking a different twist. So again, you can interpret this assignment as you will, but I would like you to have a little fun with it. We're not thinking of a direct portrait. We're kind of thinking about how we can mix shapes and colors in a new and interesting way, okay? Again, mixed media is a really good way to kind of break out of the norm. I'm gonna be going and getting my Stay Wet palette because I am working with acrylics. I'll get a jug of water, and then I'll move to the overhead camera and I'll get started with the painting demo. Here's the overhead camera angle. I'm gonna go ahead and just do regular zoom so you can see that this is the drawing on the canvas. Normally I don't do, like I said, a lot of times I don't do pencil, but when I'm really planning something out like this, I tend to switch to that. I'll zoom out for a second and then you can see, so I have my palette here. This is the Stay Wet. This is for acrylic. The sponge has been wet underneath, and then this is that particular absorbent paper that goes with the Stay Wet palette. I have the magenta, the blue, this is kind of a blue-green that I have there. I have white, I have black, this is matte medium ready for me. And then I kind of have this gritty natural sand medium here. Have it out for fun, not sure exactly where I want to use it, but we'll see. A couple palette knives. I have my thing of water. Let me bring this over. I have this kind of collection of weird kitchen utensils and then like spatulas. So these are always kind of fun. You can play with these for different texture and technique as well. The one thing nice about acrylic paint is that it really, let me zoom back in here, is that it really allows itself to be experimental. It dries kind of quickly, it builds quickly. And there's more mediums available for acrylic paint than there are for oils. So if this is something that you want to work with, I highly recommend that you play around with acrylic paints. So to look at or to move forward with this study, I'm actually going to be using this as a reference. So I want to play around with some of the things that I developed here. Not necessarily my graphite study, because that's only black and white, and that was getting me to this point. A lot of times, like I said, I'll use watercolor or sometimes even illustration marker to map out some colors that I want in the next composition. The photo was printed in black and white, and this right now is pretty far away from what the original photo was, and I'm okay with that. If I want to go back and look at the gradients of values in the face or anything along those lines, I will go ahead and do that. But for now, I'm just actually going to work from what I did here and see what I can build from that structure. A lot of times that's just a little bit more fun too, because you have a lot more liberty when you're not beholden to a photo or, you know, worried too much about your original reference. Okay, so I'm going to go back and actually take this moment to kind of time lapse. You'll see me move through this piece and how I just block in the first initial shapes, maybe add some collage to that, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this up. As you can see, this is the first mapping of the study, on there, the abstract study. I can kind of get to the composition pretty quickly because I mapped it out so much in other drawing formats. So once I get to this stage, you can see if you do a couple of studies, kind of get to that resolution a little bit quicker as far as how you're mapping it out, because you're kind of used to the composition. The other thing I wanted to talk about before I put it in is collage and how that can be used. So I'm just kind of ripping off this piece. It fits nicely into this shape here. Sometimes I cut, sometimes I rip it. But as you can see, I can add a little portion here. I just get rid of that a little bit. And you know, sometimes I just kind of tear it into place. Sometimes I like it to be subtle too, like it's not too much, but just a little bit of an extra. So I can put that in here. The way that I attach mixed media is by using some matte media, and I put that. Now again, this is kind of a canvas panel. This is a very hardboard surface that I'm painting on, so this also is very conducive for mixed media, collage, stuff like that, because the surface is rough. It's kind of, flat. It's doesn't have the give that normal canvas usually does. I put matte medium on the back, and then I cover it over the top with more matte medium and kind of blend it into the paint. And that's how I do that. I'm gonna go ahead and cover that up a little bit. Oops, got some glue. Back. And that's okay. I'm kind of letting the colors have fun with that, bringing that pop of the pink into the face, not making it black and white. I kind of decided that I'd make it magenta, little pop teal of the hat. And then I'm playing around with scraping into it. I put some sand into it here, matte medium. As you can see, I add that as I'm painting. You like to add matte medium after the first layers rather than water because it keeps you from stripping the paint. So it helps you build the paint. Matte medium is really your go-to. And that would be a great way. This is a good first pass. I can kind of stop here and let it rest for a second, give it a look, see what I want to do with it, and then go from there. So I do recommend in your first pass, this is kind of what you're looking at and what you're going for. You can add your collage textures if you want to start with that. You can definitely just block your values, your shapes, and some of the important details as you're getting started. So this concludes this demo. This will actually be the final demo for this particular course because we're ending on portraiture. Enjoy, have fun with it, and feel free to experiment. So whatever source that you're using, you can feel free to bring up details if you'd like, or keep it relatively abstract. You can work with multiple studies or just work on one larger piece as well. So it's kind of open-ended. Okay, that's all. Signing off for now, and have fun with your figure portrait sessions.